desperately wanted created because of the limitations. You know, J.J. Abrams and Disney had a very difficult task getting this movie to be what it wanted to be and what it was supposed to be because of the expectations. And what The Force Awakens does is really just brings the essence of storytelling down to a level that is so highly entertaining, and it moves so quickly and is so just enjoyable and fun to watch. There's that quote from the journalist in the Empire of Dreams documentary where he says, you know, it's just fun to watch Star Wars. It's just fun to watch it. And with The Force Awakens, it's just fun to watch that movie. The entire movie from beginning to end is just purely enjoyable. Last night I'm watching it, and I don't know how many times this is. So 1, 2, 9, 10, maybe my 11th or 12th time. Probably this would be about the 10th time watching it in really good quality. You know, I mean, whether it's movie theater or this version, this is probably the 10th time that it's worth counting to watch it, you know, because I kind of brush aside the other bootleg that I have, which is okay on a small, like, iPad screen, but really was, you know, a tough watch to watch on a big screen, and the audio wasn't very good. I'm watching it last night, and it's late. I mean, it's later. It's getting close to 10, and I go to bed about 10 o'clock even on the weekends. And I've been having my Friday night wine, and usually around this time, I'm about halfway through the movie. I didn't think I finished it last night until 10:30, so it's about 9:30-ish, and I'm kind of tired, and I was getting kind of hungry, you know, late night, you know, to need a snack. And I was trying to find a moment to walk out of the room because I didn't want to pause the movie. Okay. And the reason why was Logan was playing a video game. I was trying to time him getting off his game with me getting off of my TV so we could both go to bed at the same time. That way it just makes it easier because I didn't want to send him to bed while Dad is still up. You know, just family dad stuff. So I'm like, well, I don't want to pause it because I don't want to, you know, keep Logan up any later than he needs to be. But I couldn't decide a moment to walk out of the room. I'm sitting there watching this movie that I've now seen, again, arguably, you know, 12, 13 times, 10 times in really good quality. And I know what happens, right? I don't quite have it memorized, but I know all the beats of the film. I've seen it a bunch of times now, right? And I couldn't pick a moment in the movie that I didn't want to watch. And I kind of laughed to myself, and I went, man, this movie is just that enjoyable. And that is something that J.J. Abrams does. That is something that J.J. Abrams is to me, one of the best at, if not the best. He makes infinitely rewatchable movies. Whether it's Super 8, either of the Star Trek movies, yes, both of them, Mission Impossible 3, his movies, the way they're shot and the way they flow, they're just infinitely rewatchable. And you apply on top of that this Star Wars universe. And then you apply on top of that this great story and this hearkening back to the original movie. And that's what ends up creating this film, that there is no moment in the movie where I want to walk out and get a snack for fear that I want to watch that scene. And it was circling around right before they ended up on Takodana, Maz Kanata's planet. And I had kind of determined that I was going to walk out after they got off of Han's ship when they were showing the map for the first time, and Han goes into his speech about Luke. And I'm like, okay, well, I can walk out here. You know, things kind of slow down, and they go to Maz's castle. But I want to get back before they come out of Lightspeed heading towards the planet, and Rey says she's never seen so much green before. And then as I'm walking out and I'm hearing the dialogue in the background, I'm slowly realizing, I'm like, I want to hear this speech that Han gives. and I don't want to. I really don't want to miss. I really don't want to miss this. You know, it's putting. I'll be honest. It's putting Rian Johnson in a really tough spot. I think it's a much tougher spot than most people have discussed so far. In that, I mean, this is he's got a lot to live up to. At the same time, though, I think he's going to be cut a certain amount of slack because of so much talk around how The Force Awakens was a movie that went backwards to go forwards, in recalling and being designed like Episode 4. You know, I think that does give Rian Johnson a bit of leeway with Episode 8, because if he does something different, then critics can easily say, okay, well, he obviously tried to do something different than what Episode 7 was. But when you just consider how entertaining Episode 7 is, I mean, that's a very, very tall order. But the movie in and of itself and the storytelling of that movie, it's a reminder of, in the wake of all of these big blockbusters, in the wake of these serial movies like Hunger Games and the Divergent series, in the wake of all these superhero movies, that you can still make a movie like Star Wars and have it be as entertaining without having to have it be so bombastic. Look, there are some exciting scenes in The Force Awakens. There's no doubt about it. But when you compare it to how loud the superhero movies are, when you compare it to, I mean, any of them, like, except for some of the smaller ones, like, say, Winter Soldier to a certain extent, but like Ant-Man, okay? To me, Ant-Man was a great Marvel and one of the better Marvel superhero movies, and one of the ones that I enjoy more, just because it was just a very simple story told in a very entertaining way. Thor, the original Thor, was very much that way. It's sort of, to me, if you're comparing them to Star Wars movies, they have that sort of doing nothing with my fingers Star Wars simplicity. I mean, they're not simple, but they flow very well. They move very quickly, and they're just highly entertaining, especially when you compare them to, you know, the first Avengers movie or Age of Ultron, or certainly Batman versus Superman. And even like the Hunger Games, because I watched the Mockingjay Part 2 right before I watched The Force Awakens and really enjoyed the movie. Don't think I'd ever go back and watch it. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, because that is kind of an unfair comparison when you're talking about a movie like, you know, a series of movies like The Hunger Games. You know, I would again say, like, the first movie, and the second one's probably my favorite. I like a lot better because they're much more cohesive beginning, middle, and end stories. And that's the one thing about The Force Awakens that dawned on me last night when I was watching it, was it really does and could stand on its own as a film. Even if you strip away all the other movies and this was just its own one-off Star Wars movie, it still, you know, absolutely works on that level. You get the backstory that you need. You can fill in the blanks on the people that you're not aware of if you've never watched a Star Wars movie before. And even at the end, you get the destruction of Starkiller Base with this known threat still existing in Snoke, General Hux, and Kylo Ren, obviously making it out. And we also know now Captain Phasma, but be that as it may, making it out alive. So you know the threat's still out there, but at the same time, you've completed the journey, because the person who is going to really combat this threat, Luke Skywalker, whose sister Leia was searching for him, has been found at the end. And even apart from the Rey lineage question, you can easily assume that, okay, Starkiller Base has been destroyed, the First Order has been severely weakened, and even if they were to come back and there was no other movie, you're confident in knowing that the challenge is going to be met because Luke Skywalker is being handed back his lightsaber and drawn back into the fight. So it really does contain itself in one particular movie. And when you go back and think about the original Star Wars movie, as a kid, how different that was. And certainly for Empire Strikes Back, but we knew by then we were going to be getting a series of films. At the end of Star Wars, when I think of A New Hope and the images in my mind that kind of are burned in my mind from a kid seeing it on a small screen, I remember vaguely the movie theater that I saw the movie in. I remember certain scenes, one of them being the Death Star trench run. I remember Darth Vader's advanced TIE fighter with the curved wings and how much that stuck out because as a little kid I'm going, oh, he's the bad guy and he gets the different spaceship. And of course that was a design choice by George Lucas. That way the audience knew which TIE fighter Darth Vader was in. That makes all the sense in the world, and it absolutely worked. As you're watching that space battle, you're sitting back and you're going, okay, I know, right? I know that is Darth Vader's TIE fighter. But the one thing that's burned into my mind is the scene when Han shows up, right? But more specifically at the end in the Millennium Falcon, but more specifically when Vader's ship goes tumbling into space and then it corrects itself and it flies off. As a kid, kind of like Starkiller and Snoke telling General Hux to get Kylo Ren, bring him to me, I got to complete his training. Darth Vader flies off, not knowing there would ever be another Star Wars movie. You kind of go, oh man, he's still out there. He's a really bad guy. He got away. But the rebels still won, and now they are a combined force, and they have this victory. And so even if the threat were to reemerge, you just kind of assume that either, Darth Vader goes off on his own and, calls it quits and, buys a plot of land on Geonosis and spends the rest of his days, sucking Mai Tais through his Darth Vader mask, or The Empire Strikes Back, right? And it's very much in the same way that The Force Awakens ended up doing that and sort of having this cohesive film. I can't help but wonder too, and again, these are just all the thoughts watching the movie again last night. I still can't help but wonder, how it is going to fit with all the other movies. And how are those other movies going to flow with it? Because it was obviously open-ended with Luke, so I think that it's the next movies are going to benefit with that added knowledge of all of the history of Star Wars, leading to that moment that we're all now waiting. What does Luke say to Rey? Hello, how's it going, daughter? I'm your dad. So the other movies are going to benefit with that common thread, but at the same time, are the movies all going to flow together, neatly? Because I would actually argue that the prequel trilogy, in the way that they're designed and shot, actually flow together as a unit. I'm not talking about quality of film. I'm just talking about the flow, just how the movies are together. Those three movies, are very much a trilogy that all feels the same. The original Star Wars trilogy doesn't quite feel that way. Just with the advancements of technology, the differences in the way the movies were shot at that time period, all three of those movies, they're fairly distinct in how they move and how they flow. I would say that Return of the Jedi probably echoes A New Hope much more than it does The Empire Strikes Back. But those movies are, at least in my mind, are very distinct. And so you wonder if watching Episode 7 is going to feel like it does when you go from, say, Episode 6 to Episode 7. So looking back, looking forward with the movie coming out this week, I guess I just want to talk briefly about some of my favorite scenes and just sort of revisit them, revisit those scenes and talk about why I like them so much. Funny note, when I downloaded the movie and I had it up and I was watching it, probably the day after I got the download for it, and I had it on the TV in the living room, and I was just kind of poking around. Actually, I had downloaded a couple different versions of the RIP because I wanted to grab the best one, and so I was comparing copies, and they were all pretty much the same. But Kyle, my 9-year-old, came in, and it was towards the beginning of the film, and he goes, "Oh, is this The Force Awakens?" And I go, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh." I'm like, "Is there a scene you want to see?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to see my favorite scene." And I go, "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "I want to see Rey slide down the hill." And it just made me laugh. I'm like, All right. I mean, it could be that he's 9 years old and he knew that he wasn't going to